Hello everybody and welcome to my 4-star only Spiral Abyss run. I wanted to prove that I'm not only getting carried by my 5 stars. I'm only mostly getting carried by my 5 stars. Anyway, let's get right into it. Firstly, I wanted to go over the teams I chose and the reasoning behind them. First half, I'm going to be running an overload team with Fischl, Bennett, Xiangling, and Hazo. This side is pretty much entirely single target, with the only AoE being the 2 Ruin Graders that spawn simultaneously in the third wave of the second chamber. Furthermore, all the enemies in question are either bosses or heavy, which means that there will be no issues with the knockback caused by the overload reaction. Typically, you'd have better results running a Vape team with the Bennett Xiangling core. However, there's really only one good Hydro option who is not a 5-star, that being Xingqiu. Barbara or Candace could be okay in certain situations, but Xingqiu just provides a lot more between his damage reduction, interruption resistance, and superior Hydro application. Especially because I don't have Candace at C6, which improves her Hydro application a fair bit, it just worked out better to run Xingqiu on the second side. As such, I went for Fischl as my third unit. The overloads won't contribute a ton to this team, but the fact that Fischl herself has very strong personal damage, especially in single target, allows her to still be a good choice. As for Hazo as my Animo unit, I went for him over Sucrose, the other strong 4-star VV holder, because A, I'm a Venti main and I have a really good set of attack damage crit Animo artifacts, but B, because this side being entirely single target, Sucrose's grouping isn't really a meaningful advantage. Furthermore, it's not a team heavily focused on reaction damage, which devalues Sucrose's large team EM buff. And due to the fact that this side is single target, Sucrose's personal damage would be significantly lower than Hazo's since she can't chain swirls as a driver, and hence, I settled on Hazo. Second half, I went for a Hyperbloom team with Kale, Shinobu, Xingqiu, and Beidou. Hyperbloom is the reaction to go for if you're looking for low investment and high returns, since unlike most other comps, it can simply turn pure elemental application into massive damage, assuming you stack elemental mastery on your trigger. Dendro Trappler would generally be a better choice as my Dendro unit, since they have better consistency on their application, but in the spirit of this being a 4-star only run, I decided to exclude them, even if they are a 5-star in name only. Plus, I got Kale C6 on the Farina banner, and I wanted to play her. Shinobu was an easy pick, being one of the 2 ideal Hyperbloom triggers in the game along with EM Raiden. She consolidates healing and reliably triggers your Hyperblooms from off-field. Xingqiu is, for the aforementioned reasons, far and away the best Hydro pick. On top of having the best Hydro application of any character in the game, he brings strong personal damage and a good amount of defensive utility for comfort as well. For the 4th unit, which is quite flexible in your Hyperbloom team once you've got your Dendro, Electro, Hydro core, I chose to go for Beidou. My main trouble with this side was actually the Geo Slimes in Chamber 2. The thing about these guys is they don't take any damage until you have their shield broken, and I was just taking too long to break it with elemental application alone. As such, I wanted to bring a unit that could either do geo damage or blunt attacks. Some of the other units I considered included Ningguang, Kaveh, or Candace. Fun fact, Candace's elemental skill and second normal attack are actually blunt damage. But in the end, Beidou's strong personal damage and favorable enemy matchups led me to go for her. I'll show all of the builds at the end, but for now, let's get into the runs. First chamber, side 1, we have the PMA, Perpetual Mechanical Array. First thing I'm going to do is run forward and cast that Bennett Burst, then I'll switch to Xiangling so I can get that damage started straight away. I'm going to cast Fischl Burst and then start driving on Hazo. I cast Fischl Burst rather than Skill so that she can start building that next burst up with the Burst's Oz and her Skill's Oz, which allows me to lower her ER requirements. And now I'm just battering Xiangling up. Funneling those Bennett skills into Xiangling allows me to get more energy on her and not have to build so much ER. And now that the burst's up, I'm going to recast my stuff, make sure that Fischl can get the Bennett buff, and go back to Hazo. And after this attack, we are going to have him down enough that he starts spawning his ads. Not quite. Now I'm just going to battery Xiangling up again. Now he's spawning the ads. And I'm going to start battering Xiangling so I can kill them. I find the one. There's only one that you can damage. It is this one. Luckily, it's not the triangle, the Ruined Dorito, because that one is basically a run ender because it goes back so far. And instead, I'm just going to cast my Fischl and my Xiangling. The nice thing about Xiangling is that she is completely mobile because she snapshots, you don't have to stay in Bennett buff with her. Fischl's slightly less mobile, but as long as your enemy isn't outside of Oz's range, you can still keep that snapshot of Bennett buff. If you have to recall Oz, you do lose that Bennett buff, which is unfortunate and cuts down on her mobility, but she's still not too bad. And finally, I'm going to finish that off with an Oz cast, and we are through. Next side, we have the Thunder Manifestation. I'm going to start out by getting out Kale's skill and Xingqiu's burst so I can start producing Hyper Blooms, and then get out Shinobu's skill so I can start triggering them. And I'm just going to drive on these guys. The Thunder Manifestation is going to stay still in the center for quite a while, which is why it was safe to cast Kale's burst, and I'm just going to keep switching through my units so I can avoid damage and get those Xingqiu Rainsword procs. And now I'm going to Beidou because, well, I tried to iframe there and I failed. But the thing with Beidou is I am running her on Favonius Greatsword, which allows me to get that Favonius proc if I normal attack and score a crit hit with her. My Xingqiu does not exactly have enough energy recharge, so it's helpful to have Beidou on Favonius so that he can still get his burst back reliably, which is very important since he's our only source of Hydra application. And you can see I failed to funnel that next Favonius proc in, but they are still bonus energy particles, so that's good. And now that he's mostly down, I'm just going to go through my rotation again, but what I'm going to do here is not cast Xingqiu's burst because I'm saving it for the next chamber. It's a pretty important one to have. And his orbitals do give me enough Hydro to get some Hyper Balloons and take the Thunder Manifestation down. Alright, on this side we have several waves of Ruin enemies. This first one coming up is very annoying. So I'm going to start out casting Bennett Burst and funneling that skill into Xiangling. She didn't quite have her burst up last chamber, so we're just getting that started. And go to Heizo to get the BB. Good Widsith buff there. Now this attack is extremely annoying because it has a ton of stagger. Additionally, this guy is pretty mobile, which is rough. Luckily this time I was able to keep him pretty close to the spawn point of the other mob, so no sweat there, but that has been a run ender several times. Oof, no crit and bad Widsith buff. He's pretty easy to dodge, doesn't really stagger you too much better than the last mech. And finally, the only AoE in this entire half, these two Ruin cards. Still, not too much sweat, we got Xiangling, we got Heizo, and Fischl, even though she's better in single target, she's still admirable in AoE. And once I can get Xiangling burst out, I am going to go right back to battering it back up for the next chamber. We got one down, one to go, and there we go. Next side, we have a real problem chamber. As you can see, I'm running forward so I can collect that energy particle. Beidou didn't quite have her burst last time, so that's helpful. And as with last chamber, I am going to just go forward and start casting all my abilities, Xingqiu, Kale, and Shinobu, so I can get the Hyper Bloom started. And then I'm going to go to Beidou. This is the real reason I brought her onto this chamber. She's got blunt normal attacks, so driving on her will allow me to make quick work of those Geoslime shields. As I said earlier, they do not take any damage when their shields are up, which was a real problem for me. Also, they don't really group up after you have their shields down, because they don't really move, so you have to try and get that done before you break them. I didn't do a great job grouping these Spectres, but I had a really good run in the first half, so it's still good enough for me to get 3 stars. These two Geo Bishops are quite convenient because they group up very easily. As you can see, if I run to one, the other will just come and ground slam me, which is really great because it puts them right next to each other where I can hit them both at the same time. It's waves like these that make Beidou a really good choice for this Abyss. The thing about her is you can get a lot more damage out of her burst, her main damage source, if she's going up against exactly 2 enemies, because this allows her Chain Lightning to bounce between them the maximum number of times. Quite convenient. And the final wave, these Geolaterals. Unlike the Geoslimes, they are capable of taking damage when their shields are up, so I don't have to worry so much about driving on Beidou. It's convenient, but not going to be a deal breaker if I don't. As you can see, I am still trying to do that a little bit, but I am mostly just doing quick resolves. Similar to the Geo Bishops, these guys group up pretty easily. One will just run towards you if you run towards the second one. I did make a little bit of a mistake there not casting Shinobu's skill when I cast her burst, which leads to me to waste a few Hyper Blooms, but again, it's still good enough. And there we go, that's Chamber 2. And finally, Chamber 3, Side 1, we have the Hydrotolpa. The Hydrotolpa is really rough to go up against with Bennett, because Bennett self-applies Pyro to your active character. This means that when the Hydrotolpa's Hydro-infused attacks hit you, they are going to forward vape, which means they basically one-shot any character they hit. And this was my biggest challenge in completing this chamber. I can just run away. And another thing you want to do in a run like this is to kill the adds, because they will interrupt the Hydrotolpa from doing a more powerful attack, bad if it hits you in Bennett Burst. You can use Bennett's skill to do that because it applies 2 units of pyro, and because the only purpose of Bennett's skill really is to get energy, you're not really losing anything from doing the damage on the ad instead of the Hydro Tulpa. I made a little bit of a mistake casting Bennett Burst there, but it's still not too bad because if I need to recast Xiangling, I can just run back there and do it. And as you can see, back to battering up Xiangling, story of my life. We got 4 more seconds until we can recast. You really don't want to recast Pyronado outside of Bennett Burst because then you're losing out on a lot of attack. There's a reason that Xiangling is pretty much glued to Bennett. And as you can see, I'm doing that thing again where I cast Bennett's skill on the ad to kill it. And with the final swing of Pyronado, he is dead. So is Hazo, but that's fine. I'm processing that Hazo died, it's fine though. With these two, I can just run to the wall, and that'll be my method of grouping them up. They will both dash towards you, and I can precast my abilities in the meantime. And as you can see, right together, like clockwork. If you can keep your back to the wall, they won't ungroup. I do mess this up a little bit, as you can see, I'm dashing over that way, and that's where he targeted me. So they ungrouped a little bit, but it's okay, I still have enough damage to get it. Going through my skills and bursts, using dashes to iframe and bursts to iframe. Driving on Beto to get the Favonius proc. And as you can see, one died quite a bit earlier than the other one because they ungrouped a little bit, but that's still fine. Hyper Bloom does have exceptional single target damage after all. And with the Eremite ladies, what you're going to want to do is run towards the Pyro one, because she is mostly ranged, unlike the Dendro Eremite. In Abyss, they instantly summon their Pokemon, but this isn't too much of a problem. You can kind of just hit them all at once and the Pokemon will eventually die. And you'll have several stunned and damaged Eremites. Use that Shinobu Burst for iframes and get that damage in. And down go the Pokemon. These Eremites didn't really group up, but it's fine. As you can see, I'm getting a little tired and sloppy. I've done this run a lot of times because I died to the Hydro Tulpa a lot, but we still have plenty of time on the clock, so I'm able to just slap this Dendro Eremite and get her dead. And with Kale, we are going to finish it off. Ta-da! And as promised, let's go over the builds. First up, we have the Overload team, helmed by Fischl. Here are her stats. This is her Aggravate build, so she has a little bit more Elemental Mastery than is really useful in this team, but I don't have a second Golden Troop set. She is running an R5 Stringless, and the 4-piece Golden Troop. Crit rate, Electro damage bonus, attack. She is C6, and her talents are 2, 12, 9. Next up, we have Bennett. Here are his stats. He is on a healer support build, so focusing on energy recharge and HP. 218 energy recharge. He is running an R1 Alley Flash. Normally I run him on Skyward Blade, but since this is a 4-star only run, I went with Alley Flash instead. He is running 4-piece Noblesse Oblige, healing bonus, HP, ER. He is C2, and his talents are 3, 6, 9. Next up, Xiangling. Here are her stats. Crit ratio is kind of being carried by the catch passive. She is running an R5 catch, and 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate. Crit rate, pyro damage, attack. She is C6, and her talents are 6, 11, 13. And our final member, Hazo. Here are his stats. He is running an R5 Widsith, which is carrying his crit ratio, and 4-piece Viridescent Venerer to shred resistance for Xiangling and Fischl. Crit rate, Anemo damage bonus, attack. He is C5, and his talents are 8, 11, 11. And for our Hyper Bloom team, we'll start out with Kale. Here are her stats, a little bit low on the crit damage and the ER, but because she's running Sacrificial Bow, it's okay. She's mainly here as a Dendro applicator. As mentioned, she is running Sacrificial Bow. This is quite important because it improves her Dendro application significantly by giving her a second skill cast. That gives her more duration on both Sprout and the skill's own Dendro application. She is running 4-piece Deepwood Memory to shred resistance for herself and Shinobu's Hyper Blooms. Crit rate, Dendro damage bonus, EM. She is C6, and her talents are 3, 12, 12. Next up, Shinobu. She is on a full EM build with 935 EM. She is running an R5 Tokabu Shigire, the Umbrella Sword from the 3.3 event. The passive doesn't really do anything, so it's about equivalent to just running an Iron Sting on her. Usually I run her on Z-Post Moonlight, but due to the fact that this is a weapon banner limited weapon that has an appreciable passive, I decided it would be kind of unfair. She is running 4-piece Flower of Paradise Lost, EM, EM, EM. She is C6, and her talents are 10, 13, 13. I have her triple crowned. I like Shinobu. Next up we have Xingqiu. Here are his stats. As I said, a little bit low on the energy recharge at 192. He is running an R2 sacrificial sword. I have an R5 sacrificial sword, but it belongs to Nilou and I really didn't feel like switching it. He is running 2-piece Glad, 2-piece Heart of Depth, crit damage, hydro damage, attack. He is C4. You have no idea how much I want his C6. It has been years. And his talents are 1, 9, 12. And finally, we have Beidou. Here are her stats. She's running Fischl's old pieces from before I had a golden troop set for her. She is running an R2 Favonia's Greatsword. I could have run her on either the Mailed Flower or the Melusine Claymore, but in the case of the former, although she does have access to Quicken as an Electro unit due to her ICD, not that much of her damage is actually aggravated, and in the case of the latter, I just haven't done that many Melusine quests. Plus, Favonia's helps with Xingqiu's ER problems. She is running 2-piece attack, 2-piece attack, crit rate, electro damage, attack. She is C6, and her talents are 1, 11, 11. And those are the runs. I hope you enjoyed. I had a lot of fun. Not sure if I'll make more Genshin Impact content, we'll just see how I feel. Other than that, have a great day.